Good morning. Happy Friday. Today's lesson is for May 1st. I cannot believe we are in May already. That's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Um, so this week would have been Teachers Appreciation Week. I'm gonna miss all the gifts. um, anyway, I hope you are having a great day. Today's lesson is going to be on 306, pages 306 to 307. And my shout out is going to be Michaela. Miss Michaela, this is your shout out today. And like I said, I'm not sure who I haven't called yet, but it's you today. If someone wants to go and look at all the videos and let me know, I had someone in 7th grade do that for me. That was kind of cool. Just going through all the past videos and checking. If you're bored, Harmon, just kidding. So here we go. We're going to talk about life in feudalism, or the feudal time. And so if you haven't read it, go ahead and do this. Life in feudal France. It's just a short lesson today. We're just going to go over these pictures, talk a little bit about the society during the time. Okay, so it says, who held the power over people once the empire was divided and there was no longer a central government? They were called lords, okay, with a lowercase l. Okay, what were the manor courts just, and why or why not? There was justice in that when a serf would be tried, there were witnesses and jurors that were involved in the trial. But if the first person was found guilty, the Lord's representative would determine the punishment. So the king wouldn't determine the punishment. The lord of the manor would determine the punishment. There was a potential for injustice in that it isn't likely the lords would be tried for wrongdoing. So I think it also depends on the lord. If you had a lord that was kind and just, then maybe the punishment was just, it fit the crime. It wasn't like exceedingly harsh. Sometimes you deserve a punishment, but sometimes you have to be careful. Like someone on the street that gets caught for drug dealing or something, or not just drug dealing, that's probably not the best example, but speeding or someone, he's not going to go to trial and receive the death penalty because that would be too harsh. Speeding, but so the punishment should always fit the crime. What power struggle existed during feudalism in Europe? Well, the king, they thought of themselves as being sovereign, all-knowing, all-powerful, and over their national territories. But the popes claimed to be over all of Roman Catholics. But sometimes the popes had a higher authority than the king because it was a very power struggle during that time. In what ways did the use of Latin restrict the common people? The common people didn't know Latin, so they could not understand the words that were used in church and legal and government documents and academics. It's kind of like nowadays kids don't learn, in other schools, don't learn cursive. And one of these days, they're not going to be able to read cursive. I've heard of adults that don't know how to read cursive. And so even though it's an old thing that people say no one uses cursive anymore, but we have a lot of old documents that are written in cursive, and no one's going to be able to read those in a few years. What finally allowed the common people to have literature that they could read? A written form of their language was developed. Also, because the Bible was in Latin and they spoke in Latin, the priest or the pope could say anything to the people that they wanted to to get them to listen, because they didn't have a Bible or a way to go back and see if whatever the Pope was saying was true. And so it could cause a lot of problems. It could cause a lot of guilt and bribery and things like that. Okay, why did the Roman Catholic Church baptize babies into church when they were born? They believed that people were justified or cleansed from their sin after baptism, which is not true, because the Bible says, "For by grace are you saved through faith, not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast." And so we can't work our way for salvation, because if I got to heaven by my good works, I could say, I made it because I'm better than you. That's not how you get to heaven. Jesus Christ died on the cross, and there's proof. Remember, I told you about the thief on the cross. When he died, he didn't have a chance to be baptized because he was dead. He was going to die in just a few minutes. But Jesus said, "You will go to heaven, or you will meet me in paradise." What does the Bible teach about the purpose of baptism? Baptism is a symbol that you belong to Christ, that you're representing yourself. Just like I used that example before, when your parents have a wedding ring, and if they take it off to wash their hands or work in the yard or, cook, then just because they take their wedding ring off their finger doesn't mean that they're not married anymore. But the wedding ring just shows others that they belong to someone else. They're off limits, right? And so it's just representing yourself, that you are saying, I belong to Christ and I want to follow him. But baptism is not a form of salvation. If you don't get baptized, doesn't mean that you're going to die and go to hell or something like that, unless you don't trust Jesus. What was used to improve the people's biblical knowledge? Drama. Why would people feel greater loyalty to a lord than a king? Well, they lived on the Lord's manor, and the Lord protected them. And they probably had a better relationship with the Lord. They talked to the Lord. They knew the Lord. I mean, I know of President Trump. I read about him. I see him on the news. I see his flaws. I see his good things. But I could not go to the White House and knock on the door and say, "Hey, I want to talk to President Trump today." No, I probably would be arrested. I don't know him personally. And that's the same thing. A king could be a king, but the people don't know them personally. They know of him, but they don't know him enough to just walk up to him and just have a conversation. Okay, so there was a question on the bottom of 305, and I'm just going to go ahead and answer that question. It was saying that there is no longer a central government in Europe once Charlemagne's kingdom was divided. Feudalism developed when wealthy landowners offered protection in exchange for people's services. So, like I said, once a kingdom is divided, it's kind of hard to have one central government. You have your federal government and you have your state government. During this coronavirus, we have a lot of things that are different from other states. Some states are not as strict as the quarantine as we are. It just depends on the state. Some states aren't as crowded in there, and they don't have the people, around each other as much. I know, like Wyoming, they don't really have a quarantine because Wyoming is the least populated state in the United States. There's more cattle in Wyoming than there is people. And so when you're not around a lot of people, you have a less tendency of spreading a sickness. So that's an example. So today, that's it for today's lesson. Hopefully we'll do the, oh, I'm sorry, we'll go on to the next pages on Monday. I hope you have a great weekend. I know your weekend is probably not a lot different than your days, but at least you don't have school. So try to do something special. Maybe go outside, ride your bike, get some chalk and draw pictures on your sidewalk. Maybe encouraging notes for people that take walks so that they can see. Walk your dog if you have a dog. Just have fun. Watch some good TV, binge watch or whatever. Sleep, eat cookies, or bake chocolate chip cookies and send them to Miss Young. That would be great. Yeah, because then if you ever did that, you could just take it to the office at school and say, these are Miss Young, and they'll get them to me. Just kidding. Well, not really, but I am. And I love you guys, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope you are making good choices.